In today's video, we are covering what are the Trump tariffs, what are tariffs inflationary, and will the Trump tariffs actually pass? First, I want to show you some video clips of Trump. So if you didn't know, Trump is a huge fan of tariffs. So I want to show you these clips so that we're on the same page.
But to me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff, and it's my favorite word. But it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary, tariff. It will save our country. Only stupid people don't want to use it, or corrupt people also.
Okay, so it's clear, I mean, it's no secret that Trump is a big fan of tariffs. And Trump has floated the idea of imposing a 10% tariff on all foreign imports. So I want to show you.
Well, let me ask you what you're thinking here. Would you want tariffs on foreign goods coming into the U.S., take those revenues and cut taxes on American goods and American families here? Would that be something in a second Trump term?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Number one, I think we should have a ring around the collar, as they say. I think when companies come in and they dump their products in the United States, they should pay automatically, let's say, a 10% tax. That money would be used to pay off debt. It's a massive amount of money, even a 10%. It's not going to stop business because it's not that much, but it's enough that would really make a lot of money.
Okay, now let me explain to you what a tariff is. So I'm going to give you the definition and then I'm going to break it down for you with an example. A tariff is a tax that is imposed on goods imported from another country. So let's use Toyota cars as an example. So let's say that a Toyota Camry costs $30,000 and it's made outside of America. If there's a 10% import tariff, then there's a $3,000 tax if you want to bring the Toyota Camry into the US to sell it. So the purpose of a tariff is to make foreign products more expensive. If foreign products are more expensive, then the idea is that US consumers will be more likely to buy products that are made in America because American products would be cheaper because they wouldn't be subject to the tax. It also incentivizes foreign companies to invest in America to make their products in America. So this includes building infrastructure in America and creating jobs in America. So let me show you this video clip. This is of Charlie Kirk to help explain the positive impact of a tariff.
Here's how it really works. Let's just take, and we've done this in the past, let's take a company like Toyota. So Toyota is a Japanese car manufacturer, right? And Lyndon Baines Johnson back in the 1960s said, we're going to do a 25% tariff on all pickup trucks. Now, how do you avoid a tariff? It's not a trick question. You avoid a tariff by making the product in America. No tariff. So Toyota, what they do to get around the pickup truck tariff, which by the way, they're huge. You guys have seen Toyota pickup trucks. They're everywhere. They make all their pickup trucks in America. So what it is, it's a forcing function to redomicile labor back to the United States, not necessarily to just slap a tariff on top of goods coming in.
So there you have it. The people that support tariffs will say, you impose a tariff to promote domestic production. It will create jobs in America and boost the economy, and the US government will collect more tax revenue. So those are the theoretical benefits. However, there is a cost, and that cost is inflation. So the right question to ask is, do the pros outweigh the cons? Now, let's talk about the cost, and let's not make this complicated. It's actually very straightforward. So let's start with this. Do you know what a competitive advantage is? A competitive advantage is a quality or a factor that gives you an edge over your competitors. So let me demonstrate with an easy example. So let me ask you, is it more cost effective to generate solar energy in California or in Illinois? So it's not a trick question, just use common sense. The correct answer is California. You know why? It's because California receives more direct sunlight and has less cloud cover compared to Illinois. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. California has a competitive advantage when it comes to solar energy generation. Now, when it comes to making products, some countries have competitive advantages when it comes to their manufacturing, resources, supply chains, and labor pool. So in many cases, it is just much cheaper to make certain products in different countries. Now, did you know that 97% of clothing that Americans purchase in the USA is not made in America? So just look at the tag on your shirt. There's a 97% chance that it's not made in America. Just look at your Nikes from Thailand. Your Vietnamese Lululemon outfits look great. So your clothes from Target made the pilgrimage from China. So you know why the USA imports 97% of our clothing? It's because it's cheaper to make clothing in Bangladesh, in India, and Vietnam compared to America. Employees in Bangladesh, they get paid $150 a month. So that's about 87 cents an hour. So how are Americans supposed to compete with that low-cost labor? If you put a 10% tariff on clothing, it would still be much cheaper to continue buying clothes from Bangladesh. So we're not going to have a clothing industry revival in the US. All that would happen is that the cost of 97% of our clothing would go up by 10%, and it would cause inflation. And do you know why it's cheaper to make clothes overseas? It's not just a low cost of labor, it's a low cost of regulations as well. So just take a look at India. They can throw chemicals and dyes into the waterways or rivers. Just chuck the garbage into the waterways. It causes pollution, but it's cheaper. And they're more relaxed about clogged landfills as well. So they're not as strict as the US. So there's a reason why we as Americans prefer to import clothing. They can do it cheaper and we pay less. And clothing is just one example. Did you know that 70% of everything sold in Walmart is imported? So will tariffs be inflationary? The answer is yes. But again, the proper question to ask is, will the pros outweigh the cons? And Trump answers this question. He gives his opinion in this video clip that I want to show you.
This effect on the overall economy, and yes, you're going to find some people who would gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Okay, now let's answer this question. Who pays the tariff? Is it the foreign country? Is it the consumer? Or is it the importer? So think of what you think is the correct answer, but first let me show you what Trump says.
A tariff is a tax on a foreign country. That's the way it is, whether you like it or not. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's a tax on us. No. It's a tax on a foreign country. It's a tax on a country that's ripping us off and stealing our jobs.
Okay, so according to Trump, a tariff is a tax on a foreign country. So that may be his interpretation, but let me tell you how it works. So the question is, who pays the tariff? Okay, so when Walmart imports goods from China, Walmart pays the tariff. So let's just say that Walmart imports a vacuum cleaner from China to sell in America. So let's say that Walmart buys the vacuum for $100 and they sell it for $150 and they make a $50 profit. Now, if there's a 10% tariff, then Walmart buys the vacuum for $100, but they need to pay a $10 tax to the government. If they continue to sell the vacuum for $150, then Walmart's profits will go down from 50 to 40. Now, in order to maintain their $50 profits, Walmart will increase the price of the vacuum from $150 to $160. So essentially, the tax gets passed on to the consumer. And then the end result is that Americans end up paying $10 more for a vacuum. But then you can make the argument that Americans can choose to buy a vacuum cleaner that's made in America. But look at the vacuums made in America. You know how much a Kirby vacuum costs? It's like $500. Like, I'm not going to spend $500 on a vacuum cleaner. Or you can buy a Hoover, but those are still more expensive, around $180. So again, the US consumer ends up paying more in many instances when there are no cheaper made in America alternatives. Okay, so Walmart pays the tax. They pass that additional cost onto the US consumer. Now, where does the tax money go? Walmart sends it to the US Treasury, and it becomes more money for the government to spend. Now, let's talk about this. How much more tax money are we talking about? Like, what's the potential of the new tax revenue for the US government? So in 2024, the US government collected a total of nearly $5 trillion in tax collections. A 10% tariff on all imports is expected to bring in $400 billion of new taxes each year. So therefore, a 10% tariff would bring in about 8% of what the government currently collects. So it would not be anywhere close enough to fund the entire government. Now, I know what some people are going to argue, but I'm already 2 steps ahead of the argument. People will argue that 100 years ago, 93% of the federal government's revenues came from tariffs. So in other words, we don't need an income tax. We can just go with tariffs. America has done it before. So listen, I am not a fan of income taxes, but again, let's use common sense. How big was the size of the government 100 years ago? How much has the government grown? The government has overreached into almost all aspects of our lives. I find it disturbing. 100 years ago, the federal government's spending was 2.7% of GDP. Today, it has grown to 25% of GDP. The government, measured by spending, has grown 10 times bigger in 100 years. So back then, the government was much smaller. Therefore, the government needed less money, and tariffs alone were enough money. Today, the government needs more money, and tariffs alone will not be sufficient. The math ain't mathin'. And I must address this to get ahead of the comments. So people make the argument that Trump imposed tariffs in his previous term, which Biden kept many and also added new ones. And people will make the argument that even though Trump imposed tariffs, it did not spike inflation. So you have to realize that those tariffs were made on a smaller scale. It's nothing like a 10% tariff on all imports. In 2019, Trump's tariffs taxed about $400 billion worth of imports. So that resulted in new tax revenue of nearly $80 billion. So those were targeted tariffs. Imposing a 10% tariff on all $4 trillion of imports would be a whole different level. Now, I want to give you my opinion. The Trump tariff of 10% on all imports will not be enacted. Will Trump create new tariffs? Yes, absolutely. But they will be targeted, many at Chinese imports. So I believe there are 2 most probable outcomes. So the first one is that Trump backtracks on the idea. So this would not be the first time that he changes his mind. So listen, Trump is only human. Nobody's perfect. So I'll give you some examples of backtracking. Trump has appointed many advisors and government officials, and he ended up firing them. And there are other people that he regrets designating, such as Chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. So I'll give you another example, Bitcoin. In 2021, President Trump called Bitcoin a scam. And now he's done a 180. He wants to make the United States of America the crypto capital of the world. So let me show you the video clips.
I'll ask you one last question. You don't like Bitcoin? You wouldn't invest in Bitcoin? Do you invest in the stock market at this moment?
So not at this moment. I think it's high. So I have not invested in the stock market at this moment. I have in the past, but I have not at this moment. I think it's high. Okay. Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam. I was surprised. You know, with us, it was at 6,000 and much lower. I don't like it because it's another currency competing against the dollar. Essentially, it's a currency competing against the dollar. I want the dollar to be the currency of the world. That's what I've always said.
This afternoon, I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world.
Another big probability is that Congress stops Trump. A big question is, can Trump impose a 10% tariff on all imports without congressional approval? The U.S. Constitution grants the power to impose tariffs to Congress, not the president. However, Congress allows the president to impose tariffs if certain statutory conditions are met. So here are the exceptions. If there are imports that threaten national security, foreign policy, or the economy. If there are trade agreement violations or unfair trade practices. So if Trump attempts to pass a universal 10% tariff and Congress tries to stop him, then he could try to use one of these exceptions. So you've already seen this in action. It's kind of like how Biden forgave $10,000 to student loans, and then Congress said that you can't do that. And then Biden tried to use an exception under the HEROES Act, but then Congress said that that exception does not apply to the situation. So listen, I understand that the House and Senate are both controlled by the Republicans. However, the Republicans do not have 60 seats in the Senate. But they can attempt to use reconciliation for 50. But you also know that rhinos exist. So there are a lot of buts and no certainty for congressional approval. Now you know the benefits of tariffs, now you know the drawbacks of tariffs. The question is, from a holistic perspective, will it produce more good than bad? Let me know what you think. Please subscribe, and I wish you a good day. Take care.